We love Doctor Who and you should too. Today we're going to be talking about the Master and how they've become such a big part of the Doctor's past and his present. The Master is a Time Lord just like the Doctor, so they have many faces throughout the years. He was first introduced in 1971 during the Terror of the Automatons in a 4-part story. Through his appearances in the show, he's been described as the Doctor's childhood friend who becomes his arch nemesis. Growing up at the age of 8, the Master was out of the Time Lord initiation ceremony when he was taken before a gap in the fabric of space and time. This is known as the Untempered Schism. This was the start of his descent into becoming the Master, because one of the 3 things that normally happens to young Time Lords when looking into the Schism is they become inspired, go mad, or they just run away altogether. The Master ended up going mad. After looking into the Schism, he was left with a 4-beat drum sound that plays a huge part in the 10th Doctor's final story. But more on that later. During the Terror of the Automatons, the Doctor manages to trap the Master on Earth, making him a reoccurring nemesis for the Doctor. He wants to be the master of the universe as well as make the Doctor suffer. During this incarnation, the Master uses his many disguises and hypnosis to mingle among humans and enlist the aid of alien races in his plans. In his last adventure, he ends up working with the Daleks to provoke a war between the humans and the Draconian, but ends up failing and he escapes after shooting the Doctor. After all of this, he returns again briefly. This time, however, he's in his final regeneration and near the end of his life. He's looking severely disformed and more like a corpse. He plans on using artifacts that he came across to gain a new regeneration cycle, and the 4th Doctor ends up stopping him, and then he escapes once everyone thinks that he's dead. He then appears again, still dying and looking like a corpse, and he manages to extend his life by transferring his essence into the body of a scientist and overwriting that scientist's soul. But this only extends his life briefly, as he's still dying and he's still out of regenerations. Finally, his day comes in the 5 Doctors, the 20th anniversary special, where the Time Lords offer him a new set of regenerations if he helps the Doctor in the Death Zone. However, the Doctors do not believe him, and the Master ends up betraying the Doctors and did not get his set of regenerations. He appears again in 1996 during the Doctor Who television movie. This time he's on trial on the planet of Skaro, the homeworld of the Daleks, and he's found guilty for his crimes. The Daleks carry out his death sentence only after the Master gives his final request that his remains be brought back to Gallifrey by the Doctor. This was all a part of his plan, however, to try and steal the Doctor's remaining regenerations once again. Because, you know, it worked so well for him the first 5 times that he's tried this. Right before his execution, he once again uses his ability to transfer his mind into another and take over a snake-like entity called the Morphant. This gave him a new ability to shoot bile that would allow him to take over the mind of one of the Doctor's companions, almost completing his task finally. But at the last minute, the Doctor and his company overcome the Master and end up throwing him into a device that he was using to take over the Doctor, supposedly killing him. With the revival of Doctor Who in 2005, the Doctor now believed that all of the Time Lords but himself had died in the final days of the Time War. This was not the case, however, because the face of Bo gave the 10th Doctor a message right before he died, letting the Doctor know that he was not alone. The Doctor then meets a man named Professor Yana during the episode Utopia. He has a pocket watch that he is constantly holding, and when the Doctor and Jack are talking about his recent regeneration, it triggers something in the Professor. He starts to hear the sound of a 4-beat drumming sound that keeps getting louder and louder, and only he can hear it. This triggers him to open the watch, and all of his memories come racing back to him. With that, after 11 years of being gone from the series, the Master has returned, and with a new set of regenerations. The Master is then shot, and he dies, regenerating into a younger version of the Master. The Master was then stuck on Earth and arrived in the UK and takes on the identity of Harold Saxton, and he manages to become a high-ranking minister in the Ministry of Defense. Using this, he uses all of his abilities to form a telepathic field, enabling him to become the Prime Minister and hinder the Doctor useless. He is of course stopped by the Doctor because of his companion. The Master's wife then ends up shooting the Master, and he refuses to regenerate because he doesn't want to become the Doctor's prisoner. The Doctor then cremates the Master's body, leaving only a ring. Of course, this ring is used to reincarnate the Master, but not without a cost. It fails and he's left with an uncontrollable hunger. During this time, however, the drum beat that he was hearing comes into play, and his whole purpose is finally revealed. The 4-beat drum was a tool used by the Time Lord President to bring Gallifrey back from its time lock. The Doctor ends up stopping this plan, and when the President tries to kill the Doctor, the Master sacrifices himself to get his revenge on the President by putting the sound of the beating drum into his own mind. The Master and all of Gallifrey disappears after that point, leaving the Master's fate unknown. In the latest season of Doctor Who, we are introduced to a character named Missy. She is working for a place known as the Promised Land, or the Afterlife. And as it turns out at the ending of the season, this whole time she was working for the Cybermen. She is following around the Doctor, greeting people who died with some kind of connection to the Doctor. Finally, she meets up with the 12th Doctor and she reveals herself to be the Master. After trying to kill the Doctor using the Cybermen and failing, she meets with the Doctor to try and regain their friendship and offer the Cybermen to him as an army. The Doctor refuses and ends up handing over the army to Danny, who orders the army to destroy themselves and disperses the threatening rain clouds that could turn the dead into Cybermen. Clara then tries to kill Missy, but the Doctor wouldn't allow it, and was going to kill her himself, but before he could, she was shot by one of the rogue Cybermen. And that's the history of the Master. As of now, the Master is dead, but I'd be willing to bet that we haven't seen the last of him, or well, her if you look at the last incarnation. When do you think that the Master will return? Will it be a time to help the Doctor find Gallifrey, or will it be a time to try and end him like usual? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and thank you for joining us today. If you want to chat with us, follow us on Twitter at Comicstorian or Instagram at Comicstorian, and make sure you check out the other videos on the screen right now. You just might like them.